Welcome to Strategy Sessions by Thirsty Bandit Consulting, Episode 28, What Guests Actually Remember. Why, hello there, everybody. This is Krejcik, and I'm here with Rachel Brown for another episode of Strategy Sessions. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 28, Rachel Brown, episode 28. I have no fun number association with 28. I don't really think about that number much.
No, I don't think I do either, honestly.
Has 28 ever been used in anything of like significance or pop culture? Right?
I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of.
No, me neither. It's not like Snow White and the 28 Dwarves. That'd be a long movie, you know? Something like that, right? So,
Man, what a dad joke to start this one off.
right, hey guys.
Good.
But fun BTS for everybody listening at home. Rachel and I actually had we didn't have a prep meeting today, but we had one of our regularly scheduled kind of get-togethers, our powwows, as we talked about a bunch of projects that are in the works. But man, I felt a little bit sketchy today.
Why?
Like, well, I never like to bring like baked goods into a coffee shop or bakery.
Uh,
I mean, I
yeah.
felt like I was carrying contraband around. Um, so we
People
had,
really get worried about it, though, if it
well,
helps.
that's true. Yeah, I know. But of course it was in like a baggie too, right? Which is
Yeah.
terrible. But so backstory for everyone listening. We're working on a coffee concept right now, and my 14-year-old daughter is really into culinary. She bakes and cooks at home all the time, and we're test kitchen at our house, for a bunch of projects. And we've been working on this banana bread cookie slash muffin top recipe, and we've gone through several iterations of it, and Rach has been interested in tasting them. So we brought in some samples to her, and we met at one of our favorite coffee shops. And we didn't eat them there. We obviously bought coffees and had our chat, but passing on a baggie of test cookies just felt a little sketchy to me. That's all.
It's honestly, yes, but I'm really glad because they were very good. And so as soon as I came home, I like warmed one up a little bit. I had my third cup of coffee in as many hours, and I loved it. It was good. It was nice and gooey and chocolatey and just ooh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be
Well,
savoring the ones.
like I'm a cookie super freak, and anytime I can integrate cookie into other meals beyond just like a dessert at some point, I'm
Mhm.
a huge proponent of lunch dessert and obviously traditional dessert. But if there's a way that I can have a cookie at breakfast time and not feel guilty about it,
I'm
and so
gonna
what we're right, and what we're striving for with this cookie is a low sugar alternative, something that is more of like a breakfast biscuit, I guess, or
Mhm.
a low sugar muffin alternative. So we're gonna keep working on the recipe, and I'll keep sending you samples.
Oh no, how dreadful to be a
Mm.
part of your R&D for what you wanna serve in your coffee shop. How
I
dread
uh I love that you just like went right home and had one
I
too. That
did. I
cracks me
literally
up.
was like, "You know what? It's 11 o'clock. It's time for cookies." Like,
That's
it's
right.
set. So, yeah, I just went right for it. I wanted to
Al-
be able to provide some good feedback.
Always a good time for cookies. But you know what
Mhm.
I thought was funny today is, so our get together really wasn't like a show prep get together. It was really just to catch up, hand off cookies, etc. And I feel like our conversation actually covered the topic that we're going to cover in the podcast today, which
Mhm.
is this article that you wrote for the recent issue of Grapevine magazine, entitled "What Guests Actually Remember After a Wine Tasting." And now the title of our podcast today is "What Guests Actually Remember." Because what we typically do in strategy sessions is we talk about our experiences through the lens of wine and hospitality, because so much of our time has been spent building programs and brands within the wine space. But we are going to expand out a little bit from the article today. But you and I were sharing some experiences, just recent experiences we had, and we won't call out specific places or people or brands. Some good, some bad, some that are a work in progress. And I just thought it was interesting that we've just very recently had some notable wine experiences on the customer side that I think fall really well into the article. So why don't we start though, because it's just you and I today. It's one of those sessions where you and I are just having a chat amongst friends. Tell me really what was the motivation behind tackling this topic now?
I think with the jobs that I'm doing right now and the contracts that we have and the people that we're working with, we're really starting to talk about tasting room design, right? On what do we want to offer, what do we want to give, how do we want to train the staff, and like kind of keeping this mindset as we start to train. And knowing really like, we do all the training, we take the time, we do all these things, which is so important to do. We need to have the necessary background, but ultimately, as we're designing this, we need to be thinking about what are they going to take away from the experience in the tasting room, right? And we had a conversation similarly to this about um emotional design, how do you make people feel, and like all these things have just kind of been going around in the background of my head as we're starting to build this program, we're hiring staff, we're thinking about who we want to be in these spaces. And ultimately, we can plan and plan and plan and train and have all the SOPs in the world, but ultimately everything that we do has to go into the guest experience of like what they're going to take home with them when they're done. Like it leaves the tasting room, right? So we need to design to keep like, make a lasting impact on people that are in.
I love that you lead off the article with how you synthesize your data set, right? Very generally speaking, that when you are in this industry and you are interfacing on a daily basis with many people, and the experience can be repetitious for you, right?
Mhm,
That you start to see patterns. You start to acknowledge what guest response is going to be. You start to acknowledge that people are there for different reasons. You start to acknowledge just like overarching themes to people's experience in the tasting rooms. For you, what have been the most common patterns that you've seen that then need to be addressed, right, from an educational standpoint?
I think there's like a couple of things. One, I think I've learned to read a room really well. I can tell you probably in the first 2 minutes of the people in the room what kind of experience they're looking for. So I think kind of like having the awareness helps, but we see this with almost every single tasting, especially if you're doing like a classroom style or a private tasting. You can hold interest for probably the first 2, maybe 3 wines, and then it derails. And like I get it. You're drinking, there's alcohol, your friends are there, everybody's kind of chattering. So you have to be able to kind of pivot on the fly, but I don't think I've ever I think probably 90% of my tastings by the 3rd wine, and it's not fault of my own or whatever educator's doing it. I think it's just kind of the nature of, like, people gathering socially and being in the same room together, and alcohol is a great icebreaker, that you need to pivot almost halfway through your tasting or maybe 3/4 of the way through to still be able to execute and do your job, still make people feel like they're getting, their money's worth for like education and pairing, but knowing when to tone down, when to talk to somebody one on one, when to take a knee on the floor and just kind of like talk to someone off the side. But that's probably been the most specific thing that I can count on almost every single tasting is we're gonna get derailed.
Yeah. It's almost it kind of reminds me of our session with Jamie Cooperstein where we were talking about leaning into the gray and operating
Mhm,
in a space where you may go into it, your staff may go into it with the best laid intentions. Every single customer today is going to get a story behind the wines they're tasting, and we're going to give them an opportunity to ask questions, and we're going to geek out if they want to geek out. But that can shift really quickly
mhm,
in a space, whether it's the group themselves or the environment that they're in or just the volume of the room
mhm,
can derail all of that. And so arming staff with the confidence and knowledge to make that pivot, I
mhm.
think is imperative.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have in here is like it's not about us, right? As educators, it's about the people at the table. So we need to be able to, you know, relinquish some of the stuff that really gets us going to try to navigate that to what makes them happy ultimately, like, because the tasting's not about me, it's about them. So if we need to, like, break protocol a little bit and, like, kinda shuffle some things around, then that's what we need to do to ensure that they have the experience that they're still talking about, 2 weekends from now of when can they come back.
So one of your subtitles is the myth of information retention,
Mhm.
and you talk kind of briefly about um you know, people aren't really retaining too much when they come in, right? Most cases they just want the experience, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have the forum and the format to deliver all of the information in a setting where there will be retention, quite frankly, right?
Mhm.
So you're already starting with an arm tied behind your back, and and we've talked about this in other podcasts. Like, no one cares anymore if it's fourth generation, and the vines are this old. I mean, you might have a very small fraction of the audience that care about that, but it's the same story over and over again. So, what do you think guests actually remember? Like, what's the stuff that makes sense for them to hope and pray that there's some retention going on?
I think ultimately at the end of the day, every single person that's in a tasting room, like, they're gonna remember how you made them feel when they were there. What stood out, if the experience was personalized to them, like, you don't really wanna have the same exact copy and paste experience for every single person because every single person is different, right? They're here for different reasons, they're celebrating something different, so it's our job as we do this to try to tailor this as much as we can to kind of give them that feeling of, like, "This is just mine," you know?
Yeah, and it's funny, one of the conversations you and I had earlier today, right? We were talking about sort of these innocuous varieties, right? It's like
Mhm.
somebody serves a glass and it's like, "Oh, this is our Pinot Grigio."
Mhm.
You're right. Okay.
Okay.
And then you might get "This is crisp." You're
Right.
right, and then they roll. Well, there's like a gazillion Pinot Grigios out
Right.
there, right?
Mhm.
So is your server coming over and basically setting the stage and saying, "Can I just tell you, this Pinot Grigio was just released, and the weather is perfect for this right now. I had this with friends on my back deck this past weekend. My husband whipped up some shrimp scampi, and we just went to town. Like, we honestly only thought we were gonna go through a bottle. Thank God we had 3 bottles of this because
Mhm.
people house this." Like, that is the story, right? That is the emotion. It's like
Mhm.
you're exuding the excitement for the product. It's a product that's widely accessible, right? I
Mhm.
mean, everyone's making a Pinot Grigio, so no one really cares, right? Like,
Mhm.
what the flavor profile is, because the flavor profile of Pinot Grigio is pretty much the same in every single
Fair.
place, right? But if you can get them excited and then you can have them imagine or envision the moment, then that is the takeaway, right?
Yep. And then they know how to use it in their life, but also, like, to be on the other side of that and do a tasting and, like, um, I always used to tell people, like, I make my beef stew, I make it with this wine, and I cook it down, and it's my mom's recipe, and they're like, "Oh my god, where do you live? I'm coming for dinner." Like, you just
Mhm.
create a connection, and it just sticks with you knowing that whoever is tableside with you is gonna do what they can to make this as fun as possible for you.
Yeah, you talk a little bit too about pacing, right? And the
Mhm.
dialogue that you're gonna have with guests. And I think that's also important because it also varies, right, from guest to guest. And this does create a challenge in the more traditional environments when you're looking at term time. Because there could be added pressure, right? If
Yeah.
you're overbooked with reservations, or I mean, obviously every tasting room, every restaurant is operating on a business with very lean margins, and so your turnover is imperative, but you don't want to feel the guests rushed, right? So how do you strike that balance, right? How do you strike the balance between making them feel that they have all the time in the world,
Mhm.
but the reality is the clock is ticking, right?
Yeah, it's a really fine line to walk because you don't want anybody to feel like they are just another reservation or another transaction of, like, a bottle to go sale, right? Like, we want them to to take their 2 hours and, like, give them as much attention as we can, and in some circumstances, when things are really going well, that's when you go to your front of house or your host and say, "What can we do? Like, how can we move things around? How can we get them to stay?" But on the off chance that that's not possible, then I really just like, I think the connection just goes such a long way. I'm so glad you had a good time, come back and see me, I'm here on these days, like, I think that there's ways that you can do it without people feeling rushed as well. And I think when you can give someone really good service and like consistent service, like you were just talking about, you went to lunch and you got what, like 2 free things at a lunch service. And
Yep.
if you only had a 90-minute window and you were encroaching the time, I still feel like even if you're like, man, I wish I could stay, but even the time I had was so good, I don't mind that I need to go. And I am going to come back because I know exactly what I'm going to get when I come in the door.
And, it totally can work on the other direction too. I mean, we
Hmm.
we had an experience in Italy where we just wanted to have the dinner done,
Hmm.
and it took forever, and I mean, this is more of a European and an Italian thing in particular, but I mean, they would not let us leave until we drank limoncello and got out of there, and it was just like, "Guys, can we wrap this up? It's been a long day."
Mhm.
And so it does work it does work both ways. Sometimes you've gotta be able to read when they're ready to roll. Um, so I told one of my stories, and we had the fictitious story about Pinot Grigio, but, in the article, you do talk about this power of storytelling and
Mhm.
as it being sort of one of your own personal sort of superpowers. You wanna regale us with a story that's near and dear to you that you've used before?
Yeah, I'll use the one that's in the article because I love the story. So, my husband and I were in Oregon. We went to this winery called Adelsheim, which beautiful, like, it's just nestled, like, right in the valley, there's mountains everywhere, and we went in, and the guy that did our tasting was just, like, he was such a gem, he was so knowledgeable, and when you're in the industry, obviously, like, you can get talking, he gave us everything that the winery made off menu, but really it was the way that he spoke and the story that he told, and Adelsheim does a couple different Pinot Noirs, and they're harvested on different elevations down the side of this mountain. So you've got like top, diurnal swings, middle mountain, valley floor, where it's like nice and cold. And he was kind enough to do a vertical tasting for us and walk us through how much he loved them, what he used them for. Like, and I can't, I think I even said in the article, like, I can't tell you the alcohol or the oak content, but like, I can tell you exactly how enthusiastic he was about the differences in these wines and what he does with them that we still talk about it. It's been 3 years, and, like, literally, we were at a winery the other day, we were like, "Oh, man, remember when we were in Oregon?" Like, we're still talking about it all this time later for what he did, the way that he went out of his way for us, the stories that he told, like, it created such a memorable experience for us, and I can't remember any technical aspects at all.
Well, I mean, I think you probably remember one of the first things we did when we tried to reestablish the culture at Chadsford was put up a couple of different posters that sort of set the tempo. And I always love the Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, "Nothing great was ever accomplished without enthusiasm,"
Mhm,
because it really distills down perhaps one of the most important emotions that your service members can display, which is this unbridled enthusiasm for what they're doing, the brand, and service in general, right? I mean, this is obviously one of the pillars of unreasonable hospitality and Wilgadera, but it's so simple, right? Is if
mhm,
you show your excitement about something, it can be very infectious,
mhm,
and you can bring somebody up to that level or along for the ride, and you want your experience to be that high watermark, that metric to which people compare past experiences. You're doing a tasting locally and you're like, man, remember Oregon? Remember how good that was compared to today? Or I
mhm,
wish the experience I'm having right now was a little bit more like what this guy did.
mhm,
That is the goal, right? I mean,
mhm,
that's the goal. And when you're developing these programs, right, you need to keep that in mind. What can we be doing
mhm,
to truly resonate and be in the experience? And I love the fact it's like, yeah, I don't remember what oak they used. I don't remember what the ABV was. I don't remember all of the stuff he was super excited to tell you. You
mhm.
don't remember, but you
I
remember
don't
his
remember.
excitement.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I can tell you exactly what that tasting room looked like, and I can remember being there thinking, "Holy crap, this is cool."
Well, what about creating that connection with something that you've actually had at your tasting, right? And again, we'll talk about this from the wine perspective, but obviously this can apply across all of Alc Bev. It can apply in various food artisans, etc. Like particularly artisans that are doing sampling programs and tastings and things like that. The end goal here is like, yeah, I want to engage you in the moment, but the real win is you leaving with something. I want you to make a connection with something that you had and try to replicate that experience at
Mhm.
home, right? So, how do you hone in, right? How do you use your senses to figure out what the customer's really vibing with and try to seal the deal?
I think a lot of it just has to be a conversation. Like, right, when they come in, what do we like to drink? What are we feeling? Do we want more like fruit? Do we want sweet? Do we want dry? And I don't think that that only happens once in a tasting, which I think sometimes gets missed because it needs to be a continuation of like, well, what did you think of this wine? What did you like about it? Did you feel like it was too acidic? Did you feel like this? Okay, well, do you want something else? Like, really, it's like solving a puzzle, right? And, like, my job now and I tell everybody, like, "I'm gonna get you to love at least 1. Like, if it's not all 5, then I'm gonna find you a wine." And taking the time to do that and hopefully have them resonate with something of like, okay, well, if you like it like this, go home and try it with X, Y, and Z. You can make this, it's super easy. And I think giving them access to the wine in their life, how to use it to remove the, we talk about this all the time, the stereotype of like, it has to be duck confit on a Wednesday. Like, it doesn't need to be. It can be like Thai food from your local place around the corner. But really, I think it is constantly just gauging the tasting. How are we doing? What are we feeling? What are we liking? What do we feel like we need different? It has to be a constant assessment. You can't just do it once and be like, I've done my job. Like, it doesn't leave until they do, or it doesn't end until they head out.
Well, and also if you ask some questions of your guests and sort of
Mhm.
know what their preferences are, it better informs you as to what some of those suggestions might be. For example, like my Pinot Grigio reference, right? I know that you are very allergic to shellfish. I would not be using the shrimp scampi,
Right.
suggestion to you. And so if I overhear you speaking to somebody saying, "Oh, we were at this crazy seafood place and they had nothing for me to eat there,"
Mhm.
right? All of a sudden, I'm thinking, okay, or this person's a vegetarian. I need to be thinking about how they would apply this wine or
Correct.
or this item in their daily life because my experience, my story, my example is not representative of what they do. And
Mhm.
so you've got to listen, right? You've got to kind of tune into what they're saying and sort of it's like forensic work. You got to pick the clues up to kind of work it out. So then you talk about we're just kind of talking about the technicality of things and but I do like you have a section called what they don't remember, right?
Mhm.
Which I think is important because uh, this is not to say like we're saying like they don't care a lot of times about the technical stuff, right?
Mhm.
But it is still important, even if they don't care about it and they don't remember it. It creates like a level of validity, right? Like you're
Mhm.
supposed to be the expert, so even though they don't remember, it doesn't mean that they don't value it.
Right. And I think finding a way to work it into that is interesting. Like, you and I can sit here and we can, like, go on and on, "Oh, it's the pH and it's the soil." Like, yes, cool, okay. But, like, to understand, like, something really small or nuanced that they can take home with them, I've found is the trick. So to, like, really feed in some information, but still do it in a way that kinda feels like you're telling almost like an inside joke, I think, kinda lingers with people where they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea." Like, even getting people to understand, like, what swirling does to a wine or how your olfactory works. Like, I always do the Hershey Kiss analogy that, like, if you put a piece of chocolate in your mouth and clog your nose, you're gonna lose a lot of your flavor because your nose is so responsible for what you taste, which is a valid way that we talk about tasting, and people are like, "Oh my god, I had no idea. I'm gonna go home and try that." Like, there's little things that we can pop in that are still valid and still super informational and make them fun, but, like, we're trained on all these things because there is gonna be a day where someone comes in and they're like, "So tell me about the vineyards," and, like, you gotta be ready for that,
Yeah.
right? Like, you need to be able to say, "Oh, it's this kind of soil, this is how they grow, this was the harvest," we need to prep for that, but 9 times out of 10, it's not what we're getting in all of our tastings.
Yeah. I and to kind of build off of that, looking for terms, looking for examples that are outside of the generic vernacular, right? I mean, you had mentioned right before about not everything needs to pair with duck confit, right? Um, I always love to lean into examples like we've used Swiss Army knife for a
Mhm.
wine, right? Where like somebody can understand the functionality of that and the utility of it and then
Mhm.
apply it to a wine. And those types of references can be very memorable because they're not like something they've heard before
Right.
in a traditional tasting. So if you can pull and associate wines that aren't traditionally used in those settings, I
Mhm.
think it also lends itself to be more memorable from that standpoint. But then you've got to be willing and able to speak the speak
Right.
when somebody comes in and wants to be able to talk to you about bricks or
Mhm.
mallow
Mhm.
or whatever it is, right? I mean, and so and that's a big ask for a lot of staff that are working part-time, right? Because you are asking them to show a part of themselves, right? Like I mean, you can make up all of this stuff, like if you want to make up stories and things like that, but it's usually easier to pull from personal experience
Mhm.
sometimes. But then they have to retain all of this knowledge, and then they've got to seamlessly weave back and forth based upon what the audience wants, right?
Mhm.
And then it gets even trickier because your tasting room could be comprised of, several groups that all need a little something different, right? So you need to, as you said earlier, read the room, but then read each table and apply accordingly, right? So let's talk about the tasting room is filled
Mhm.
and you're servicing several different tables. Any tips or strategies to how to navigate between each particular group?
I feel like it's like spidey senses. Like, I just feel like there needs to be an awareness. Like, I usually find myself, like, once I go through and I'm kind of going through every table and we're talking, like, I usually try to take a minute and I go somewhere where no one can really see me and I watch. And I look at body language. I look to see, are they looking around? Are they looking for me? Are they looking for someone? Are they tasting? Do they look like they have a question? Are they poking? Like, you have to kind of like have a like everything the sunlight touches is my kingdom kind of approach, right? So, it's just awareness, and even if you're busy, like, even as I'm talking to tables, like, I'm kind of still listening to the conversation behind me, I'm looking at the table in front of me, like, my attention is here, but I'm also kind of spatially aware of what's happening around me, and I think that's really the difference, like, we were somewhere the other day, and we were just kinda sitting there like, where is everybody? Like, if I've got people that are looking around, I'm not doing my job correctly. Like, I need to be kind of aware of what every table is at. You check in with your staff. If you've got other servers, what do they need? What's table 12 want? How are they liking the wine? Like, it has to be a constant check in. You can't just say, talked about the wines, I'm done, right? Like, it doesn't end there.
Yeah, it's funny because you feel like a creeper sometimes when you're like
Literally.
behind the bar and you're like trying to
Really
pick
good.
up facial cues, like are they
Really. Yep.
happy? Are they sad? Like you're trying
Mhm.
to read lips, you're trying to figure out, but all of that is intended, like the intentions are just because what you're trying to do is, you know, give them an experience that plays into what's giving them the most joy at that moment, right? So, I think you have to pick up on that stuff. Like it's not you're not being intrusive
Mm-mm.
if you're standing in the back and you're watching them interact and seeing how they interact. And is it good? Is it bad? Is it neutral? Are they looking for more? Do they look underwhelmed? You
Mhm.
know,
Literally.
what do we have to do in order for them to have a big smile on their face and pass their glass back and forth to one another, being like, "Oh my god, you need to try this,"
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That's a huge opportunity to just pour an extra pour, right? Or if they're really into a particular varietal or like if you've got that same wine, um from the next vintage, you can do like a mini vertical or something like that to just play into what they love the most about what's going on because it's impossible, right? Very rarely do they like everything, right?
Right.
Very rarely do they love every single wine that's on the table, every single item that they've had. So lean into the stuff that's really,
Mhm.
they're really jazzed about.
Yeah, and it doesn't take anything to do it. I know you love this one so much. Let's go back and revisit. Tell me if it's still your favorite. It takes 0 energy to go out of your way and do that for somebody.
Yeah, or let's just forget about that other one. You know what?
Mhm.
This wine is dead to me. We're just moving it off the table. You know what I mean? And we're going to focus on the stuff that you really, really like today. Again,
Mhm.
when you're working for a restaurant that has 30 wines by the glass, right? You're not going to hit a home run every single time,
Mhm.
right? And the restaurants that have those programs, they're they're really good sometimes. They can be really good that, like, if you don't like it, they will get you something else.
Mhm.
Or they know that there's value in taking a minute to say, let me just get you a 1 ounce pour of that.
Yep.
And if you like it, then you can commit to a glass. Because
Mhm.
anymore, I mean, wine by the glass can, easily average $15 a glass. I mean, it's a
Right.
commitment.
Mhm.
It's a commitment for that. And you want to make sure that they love what's in there.
And I
Um,
just feel like that's hospitality too, right? Like, "I'm not sure, I'm stuck, I'm on the in between." Like, we just had a guest on who talked about that, right? With the Rieslings, like, which one do I wanna do? They brought a pour of each,
right.
and it's like, cool, it's so easy to just, like, take a little extra time
Hmm.
and do that.
Hmm. This feeds really well into that pacing and presence
Mhm,
conversation, right? Because again, we talked a little bit earlier about the bustling dining room or tasting room where you're trying to, flip and you're trying to make sure everybody's accounted for, but there is obviously an art form to pacing, right? I mean,
mhm,
about making sure that even if you've got that compressed period of time, as we said, that you are getting the most out of it. And some of these strategies do take time, right? I mean, it may not be a lot of effort, but you are breaking up a rhythm sometimes if like they're taking a sample, they're taking their time to think about it, then you got to go back and get the glass and you got so it's that balancing act, right? I mean, like you've got to make sure that they're getting it and that you're on top of it. But you wanna give them time to make decisions that they're going to be happy with.
mhm. Yeah, like, when it's busy like that, you can feel it if service is going slow, if it's going too fast, like, if they're, like, just now pouring a wine in your glass and you're already clearing their table, like, they can feel rushed too. Like, I really think the energy that we carry with ourselves is palpable. So if we're in a tasting room and it's crazy and we're rushing and we're going quickly or, like, we're too slow, like, all of that I just feel like bleeds in to everything that we do. And it's hard if you have a table that needs more attention than someone else, if they've got a lot of questions, if they need a lot of things, sometimes you can get pulled in one way. But I think when things like that happen, what I've started to do is like, "Hey, I can't get over there right now. Can you go check on 10 and see if they're okay? Like, see if they need anything. Do they wanna know?" Like, you have to be able to delegate too, right? And, like, have somebody else check in and be like, "Tell them I'll be over there in 5 minutes, but I need you to go there first." Like, there are ways to do this where people still feel cared for without kind of sacrificing every table's experience.
Yeah, I mean, when you have the luxury of like a wine captain or a som that can float or even a hands-on GM or somebody that can just support service. I also love not only is it, they're an extra set of eyes to kinda see how things are going and if the server is tied up with another table that is demanding a little bit more attention, but I also love it as a reinforcement, right?
Mhm,
I've used this a lot where, um, a group has had a flight. I'm not their server. I walk over and I ask them to tell me about what they just drank.
mhm,
And again, more data points because they're saying, wow, I really loved this Cabernet Franc. And then it's oh my God, me too, right? Or
mhm,
did they pour you the Cabernet Franc? And they're like,
mhm,
yeah, they did. Oh, I'm so glad you had a chance to taste that because it gives somebody else the ability to reinforce the messaging that your servers are already trying to reinforce. And I think it
mhm.
certainly amplifies that message, especially if they're excited about it. too, because now all of a sudden we're all really stoked about this,
We're all jazzed about the cat
right?
frog.
So, um, I love. Okay, Rach. So you end this article with this line that I really, really love, which is the key to creating a memorable tasting experience doesn't require more, it requires intention. And I think that builds off of so much of what we've already discussed on the call today. But in your words, what do you think that really means?
I think it means, you walk into a place and you can go, wow, and it can be gorgeous and it can be beautiful. But if the heart isn't in it, none of it matters. So, like, designing your training programs to make sure that your staff is aware, they can read body language, they're able to open up and talk, to create spaces where people can feel comfortable, where they can make memories. Like, really, every single intention is based off of us as humans. And, what kind of experience would you want if you were coming in too, if this was your first time? Like, taking a minute to make a personalized menu for a tasting, to wish somebody a happy birthday if it's in a note. Like, these are the little tiny intangibles that, like, oh my gosh, they remembered it was our birthday. We did a tasting in Virginia and it said happy anniversary. Like, they're the little things that you're like, oh man, like, they cared. They didn't need to do this, but they did it. And that's the stuff that will stick with you long after that.
Yeah, yeah, it's designing for that intention, right? I mean, what are the elements that are going to define the brand experience? What are the emotions we're trying to evoke when people come in? And again, can't be understated, the need to show enthusiasm and passion about it. You need to have the same degree of enthusiasm about what you're pouring and what you're serving as you and I have for banana bread chocolate chip cookies,
So
right?
true. So true. So
So
true.
hopefully we didn't make anybody too hungry. If you get a chance, read Rachel's article in the current issue of Grapevine Magazine. We'll also be posting it on our blog through Thirsty Bandit. But this is always super fun to talk strategy with you, Rach, and this has been a really fun article. I know this one was a fun one for you to write, but it really hits home for us as we go out in the world as both consumers and consultants. But so thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, of course.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode of Strategy Sessions. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us for Strategy Sessions. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe at Thirsty Bandit Co.